Okay, everybody, it just keeps getting, it's just so wonderful. And I have to tell you, I can't wait for our next speaker. So I have the pleasure, and I'm trying to find my sheet here to make sure I do this appropriately, but our next speaker is Nicole Taylor, the CEO of Silicon Valley Community Foundation. And, you know, she has a very impressive biography. She has done a lot in the philanthropic space, including being with East Bay Community Foundation. I just learned tonight she was with College Track. I didn't even know that. Worked at Stanford. I mean, Nicole has an impressive resume, but I think what's most important to me is that Nicole has done a lot of her work in the Bay Area. She left for 2 years to go to Arizona, but now she's back. And I am delighted you are back. And I have heard Nicole now on her listening tour in the Bay Area a couple of times, and she has such a heart for our community and such a passion for it. So thank you for being with us this evening, and I am delighted to welcome Nicole Taylor, the new CEO of the Silicon Valley Community Foundation.
Thank you. And I'm not going to stand behind the podium because I'm trying to get proximate. So, one, it is an honor and pleasure to be here. I'm very excited to be with you this evening and to be in this building because I remember when they were building it when I was running the Haas Center at Stanford. And I was like, oh, one day I'm going to be able to be in there. And of course, many years later, I am. So thank you for having me. And Tony, I don't need to say anything. That was incredible, and the spirit of which you were living your life, you and your wife are living your lives, is exactly why I do the work that I do. So thank you. I was asked to just give you a little bit about my history, because it is why I'm here and doing this work. I'm the daughter of an immigrant, and when I say that, people usually are like, you don't look like an immigrant. So my mother's from Jamaica, and she came to this country with a 6th grade education and as a domestic for a wealthy Chinese family. So I actually spoke Mandarin when I was younger. And they were a very successful family, but they didn't pay my mom until she actually needed to take me to the doctor and take me to the dentist, and so she finally worked also in their business so she could get health benefits and get a paycheck and then also work with them at home. So she would drive me to school in the mornings and say, you're gonna make something of yourself. You're gonna make something of yourself. You're gonna do better than I could have ever dreamed. That's why I came to this country. You're gonna do better than I ever dreamed. And don't forget, to whom much is given, much is expected. And you're gonna do big things, so don't forget to get back. And she would tell me this over and over and over. Yeah, Mom, whatever. I'm late for school, you know. I was Americanized by that point. So that has stuck with me. And I knew that education was our way out of poverty. You know, I lived in third world poverty. So I knew what, American poverty is bad. Many of you know. You go to a developing nation, it's a whole different level of poverty. You know, my mom didn't have running water when she was growing up. And so I knew that I had to be the best that I could. I was really great in school, so I got a full ride to Stanford. So I moved to this community when I was 17 years old. And I'd never seen it, because we didn't have money to do like college trips, didn't even know what that was. The first time I saw Stanford was when we drove up in her broken down car up, University Drive and through Palm Drive, and I was like, right? But I knew from that day, it was on. And for those of you who are people of color or from immigrant backgrounds, you probably heard the same thing I heard. You have to be better than anyone else in order for them to even consider you as an equal. I see some head nodding. So I knew that's what I had to do, and I worked really hard, and I'm very grateful to that university for the education I got. And I didn't become a doctor because chemistry was not my friend, and I remember calling my mom and said, hey, I think I'm gonna be a teacher. Silence on the phone. You didn't go to Stanford to become a teacher. She said in her Jamaican accent. I said, yeah, but Mom, I can help all these other kids who are like me and like our family. And she said, whatever you want, honey, just be the best that you can be. So I started as a middle school science teacher, because I was a human biology major. And taught here in Palo Alto and then taught in West Oakland. two public school systems that couldn't have been further apart from each other. And when I got to West Oakland, it's now a KIPP school. Actually, this school I taught at, thank God, because that school was heartbreaking every day. I said, well, I know I'm helping these kids every day, the 150 kids I saw every day, but there's something wrong with the system. So I went into nonprofit work, I went into public policy work and school reform work, and fell into philanthropy. And realized that I was pretty good at figuring out how to connect resources with community and vice versa, and loved it. And I was able to bring the passion that I had for people, and the passion I had for communities, and passion I had for people in need, and connect it with who knew that long ago that I learned how to walk in both worlds by how I grew up. So I was able to talk about investments and talk about work and talk to entrepreneurs because my mom worked for that family that was just like that. And so I was able to bridge this part of my very personal life with something that I felt was bigger than me and greater than me. And so that's what's led me to the work and why I do what I do. I have such a sense of urgency in this. I came back, after being gone for 2 years. I was at Stanford when I left, and there were, I don't know, half a dozen RVs outside the stadium. You can't see the sidewalk now. And I said, what happened? I live in Menlo Park. This weekend, I'm walking down Santa Cruz Avenue, and there's a mother with a sign breastfeeding her baby on Santa Cruz Avenue in Menlo Park, asking for help. And I'm like, wait a minute. I had to go into Palo Alto to get something, so I'm on University Avenue, and I'm walk past the new Apple store, and there's it's either a venture firm or a private equity firm, and then there's another woman breastfeeding her baby on University Avenue. I mean, you couldn't get more cognitive dissonance than in that moment. Same day. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, what can I do? If I'm saying that, and this is my day job, to do philanthropy and help people with philanthropy, I'm like, well, I can't be the only one who's jarred by this. And University Avenue was teeming with people, all of us walking by this woman who's breastfeeding her baby with a sign, no job, need help. And I said, this is where we've come to in this community that helped raise me professionally and personally since I was 17. This to me is home, and this is where we've come to. So I have a sense of urgency about what I do, and a sense of urgency, and I feel complicit in what we've done and what we've allowed to happen here. So I am on a mission to bring the community back to the Community Foundation, to build on the amazing work of people who are there. One of my colleagues, Gina Dalma, is in this room. And Gina's been doing some phenomenal work at the foundation. Build on work and the knowledge that our folks have. Build on the passions of our donors and what they want to do and what they want to accomplish, and build that bridge between the community and our donors and vice versa. And help them understand, both sides understand how to work together on the path to solutions, on things that you cannot ignore anymore. I speak a lot these days. I was telling a group of folks recently, I said, 5-10 years ago, you could go from your home to your office, drop your kids off, maybe go to the store, and you wouldn't see the needs. You could do that, right? You could figure out a path to do all those things in any given day and not see the needs. You can't do that anymore. And so if you are like me, there are many days that you're like, what can I do? Well, one, just by being here and being part of SV2, you're doing it. You're realizing that you need to give your time, you need to learn, and you need to give your resources. And in really creative ways, because grant making alone isn't going to do it. You need to figure out how to get the capital into the communities that you care about. So you are already doing it, you're on your way. And the fact that you're doing it in community with each other is phenomenal, because it can be hard work, it can be heartbreaking work, it can be lonely work if you try to do it on your own, and you're not going to get as far than if you do it collectively. So I just encourage you to keep doing what you're doing. Keep down the road, we need you. We need your passion, we need your energy. Yes, we need your resources. We also need your ingenuity, your creativity. We are in the valley of innovation. Think about everything that's been created because of this valley. I always say, now I'm no longer saying this, what came first, Silicon Valley or Stanford? Silicon Valley or Stanford? Well, it doesn't matter. They kind of all grew up at the same, around the same, right? Thanks to Terman and all the guys who got the valley started, and then the connection between the two. I was asked to work with a group on long-range planning at Stanford recently, and it was Stanford in the world, and what should Stanford be in the world? I was like, first, how about Stanford right here? And I said, because if we're going to go to other parts of the world, which we kind of already do, and people want to be like Silicon Valley, everywhere you go, oh my gosh, we want to replicate the ecosystem of Silicon Valley. I'm like, that's fantastic. Don't forget the human part that we left behind. Thank you. They were taking notes. It was great. And then they started doing what, they do. They're like, oh my God, we got to bring the sociologists into this. We actually have to study the data trends about what has happened in the last 20 years right here before we think we can go. I said, yeah, where? To India and China and Eastern Europe and Seattle and replicate exactly what we've done here. So they got it. So I'm very excited. So I get to do things like that, and all I'm doing is speaking what I know is the truth. So thank you for having me. Thank you for allowing me to be with you. And this is the beginning of my journey at the Community Foundation. This is my 4th month. We're about to start strategic planning. So I hopefully will be back and engage you in conversation and dialogue as we think about where we need to go and how we need to engage with you all. We're already starting to think about how we work together. Had a great conversation. Alexa, I saw you earlier. Alexa Colo came right there. We had some great conversations already. Catherine, Crystal Foster, and I are already partners in crime. So this is what we are about. This is where we're headed. So thank you.
Thank you.